Hello everyone and welcome to the class. So my name is Haunting Deity. I'm one of the FCs in Brave and I've been FCing for many years now. And today we're basically going to look at, so I'll start with this, like what is the aim of this class? The aim of this class is to look at mostly the setup that you as an FC should have personally. So what a lot of new FCs focus on and what typically FC classes focus on is what it is that FCs ought to be telling other people to do. And I think that's a little skewed, that's the wrong approach. Like, the first thing you want to do before you worry about what others should be doing is worry about if you're doing the right thing, if you're set up properly to run fleets in the first place. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is focus on your key bindings, really important key bindings. Now, there isn't an in-game fleet for this class, but you perhaps might want to be in-game anyway, just to be able to maybe implement some of the things that I'm going to recommend you do here. Key bindings, right? Let's look at important key bindings for FCs. When you're thinking about what key bindings you want for FCing, what you really want to think about first is, what are the broadcasts which you're normally making? What are the things which you're normally doing most commonly, right? So if you've ever been on a fleet, you don't have to be an FC. If you've ever been on a fleet, you'll know that the number one most common broadcast is broadcast target, right? This one here. I can't broadcast as a target, but this keeps her as a target, right? This one here. And then you've also got broadcast align, right? These are like the top two broadcasts that you're going to use all the time, right? So do you want to have to constantly like right click a thing, then broadcast align to? You can probably maybe get away with that if you really want, but I think that's, but an even worse tragedy is, do you really want to have to right click and do broadcast target every time? Because if you imagine you're going through a big list of people, that's not very efficient. You might get cluttered up there. So what I'd recommend you do is go into your settings, go to shortcuts. So click any, it doesn't matter which one, type broadcast and you'll get all the broadcast ones. So the way I've got it set up is for broadcast target person. Like, you can set this to whatever you want. Like, you might have like a mouse binding, for example, or something. Do whatever you want. For me, I've got T, I mean, that makes sense, right? T for target. And I've got A for align, right? So what this means with this setup is, if I press T and then click on something, you can see in the broadcast history it's broadcasting as a target. Okay, so that's broadcast targets, and then we have broadcast align, which is just that. So I'd recommend you do that. Another thing which is really useful actually is something that's come up recently. If you're into logic commanding, they've added this sort of more recently, I'm not sure when, but there's this broadcast repair target. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed that. This is this new thing. I'm going to try it out actually. I'll try it on, I don't know if I can, H, right? If you click H, it will be a broadcast for Logis to repair a certain person. So that's interesting, but that's more for Logi stuff. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. Another thing that's sort of less, I think that's like pretty commonly known to set up a broadcast key binding like that. Something that's less known, there's certain key bindings which are on by default that can fuck you over and have fucked me over and a few people over many times before. And those bindings are, if you go into shortcuts and then go to navigation, if you look at these two, if you look at these ones, pitch up and pitch down, you'll notice I have them unbound. By default, these will be your up arrow and your down arrow. Now, what I'm about to tell you is not just me. There's a few people I've known that have had this exact issue, where they'll be flying their ship, and then all of a sudden, randomly their ship just like points directly upwards or directly downwards, and no matter what they do, they cannot regain control of their ship. And it turns out it's a function of this. Now, I want to be clear about what I'm saying there. That is not because the key on the keyboard was stuck. That has nothing to do with the keyboard. This has happened like with many different people, including myself. It's not just me and my shitty keyboard, right? There's something about this bind that it bugs on occasion, and it will just like turn on permanently, and the only way to turn it off is restarting your client. So I recommend like everyone, no matter who you are, FC or not, to actually unbind these because they can fuck you at a really inopportune moment. Okay. Okay, so that basically concludes sort of the really important key bindings that you're going to want to have. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is your overview. So specific like this, not just the whole GUI, but specifically your overview. Your overview is a really important part of FC. A lot of people when they're FCing, I'll see their videos that they'll have, for example, and they'll just have the default ZTAC-S overview or some shit like that, and that's crazy. Like that's really crazy to run a fleet with an overview set up as basic as that. That's just, yeah, it's not good. So what you want to do is, as an FC, is have a really comprehensive overview. So I'm going to look at my setup, for example. So on ZTAC-S, you'll have like this PvP is like your combat tab. You'll have that by default. You'll have like maybe like colliders and pod saver, like those are like just sort of like the basic stuff that everyone kind of has. Maybe a blues tab, and that's and maybe an aligned tab as well. So those are kind of the basics. Now, a lot of FCs they'll also they'll you know semi-intelligent. They'll be like, okay, they'll have like a tab which is like specifically dedicated to having lodges only, and that's important because sometimes you want to be able to focus the enemy logistics like basilisks and all that stuff. The recons, obviously that's very important for Sino stuff, or if for example you want to take out their webbers or something. So like, you know, that kind of stuff there is you know, really obvious. Like command ships is kind of obvious as well, and a lot of FCs will do that as well. But what I don't see so much of in a lot of people's setups is the rest of this. So if we look over here, you can see here I've got 4 little purple tabs over here. I've got F/D, which is frigates and destroyers. I've got C, which is just cruisers. BC, just battle cruisers, and BS, just battleships. And these are just basically, if you only want to view battleships, then you only see battleships with that, etc, etc, etc. Now, those tabs there, if I'm honest, are only really relevant to you in an FC capacity if you are either actively or aspiring to be an FC involved in fights which are have like several hundred people or maybe even several thousand people in local. You know, if you're only doing like roams and small scale home defense or something like that, you don't need that. That's overkill. That's really just more for the bigger fights where you have so many ships on grid that having the ability to filter that down is really useful. So for example, when we're talking like really big like coalition level fights which involve, you know, maybe 800 people in local, 1,500 people in local or something like that, often, oh, I'm drifting off, well, oftentimes the case will be that collectively all of the fleets will focus on the battleships because that's the main thing that you want to take out usually in fights like that. It makes your life significantly easier to do that if you're able to just filter battleships and then focus on battleships. Now, sure, like you can in theory just locate different fleets like that from your PvP tab, because if you think about it, fleets are normally going to be in discrete distance bands from each other. So for example, like if we look at this grid, let's pretend like that hangar container there is like, I don't know, a hostile rogue fleet, then that container there is like a hostile jackdaw fleet. They'll all be roughly within the same range from you, and they'll all be roughly within the same range as you. But I think just having the ability to not have to scroll down and look for fleets like that and just have to click, oh, click, and there's all the battleships, it just makes your life a lot easier. But again, to be honest, like if you're starting out, those are the only tabs I would say are overkill here, unless you're like really in like big fights. What's not overkill at all, what everyone should definitely have, are these down here. Now, for those of you who are not aware, it's been in the game for a while now, but for those who are not aware, you are able to separate overview tabs out. So if, for example, I wanted to separate my blue tab out for some reason, I would right click that, I would click move tab 2, then I would click new window, then that will be a separated overview which I can then move independently of my main one. And the way that I've got this set up, you can see here that I've got, let's focus on monitors and inhibs and pods later. Let's just focus on these two. So I've got dictors in one separated tab, and I've got bushers in one separated tab. This is unbelievably important. Really, really important. I would really not recommend running a fleet without having that capability. And the reason why is because if you're running a fleet and you're in the middle of a big fight, and then a hostile, I don't know, Bifrost or some dickhead comes along, dives into your fleet and tries to bush, 25 people of your people off 100 kilometers away. If you've got a tab just filled with just hostile ship after hostile ship, the chance of you just missing that is very high. It's very difficult to spot that when it's just merged in with every single ship which is on the grid. Having the ability to always be able to see bushers like sticking out like a sore thumb in this tab is really, really important. Same with dictors, maybe not such as important as bushers, because dictors, at the end of the day, dictors are cool, but they can't bush they can't bush 25 of your fleet members 100 kilometers away. But what they can do is bubble your fleet and pin you down and stop you from leaving. So I also think that's really important to be able to filter that out as well. And then as far as like the rest, like pods, that's just a personal preference thing. I don't like pods on the main tab because I think it gets very cluttered when you have pods there. Monitors, I think, is really nice to have on a separate one just to quickly find hostile FCs. And inhibs is really important as well, especially if you're doing like crabbing stuff, but even also FCing, like if hostiles drop, if you're like saving, for example, a tackled cap and hostiles put an inhib down, you need to be able to have the ability to quickly locate that. And when you're under pressure and you can't find it on the overview, that can maybe be problematic. So it's maybe good to have an inhibs only tab. Yeah, and also a dedicated Sinos tab would be good. So that kind of falls under recons. I've got recons here, but the reason I've got recons there is more to fight like Hugin's Webami and stuff like that. But I would maybe have like a Sinos one as well, maybe merge it in with inhibs or something, just to have it there. But yeah, the main take I want you to have from this is if you're not taking advantage of the utility that you're able to have multiple overview tabs, then I really think you're missing out, and I really think you ought to go ahead and take the time to do that and set it up properly. Like my overview, for example, has like every single tab filled to the brim, every single one. Yeah, and then I also have a D-scan filter as well. So I would definitely sit down and take... You don't have to make your own overview, by the way. This is not like my overview as such. This is the ZS overview. ZS will give you a few tabs, but it will also like have like a bunch of pre-built filters that is just not assigned to a tab, that you just have to do it yourself. So like all of this stuff here you're seeing, I didn't make any of this. I maybe adjusted it slightly to my kind of personal preferences, maybe removed the odd thing and added the odd thing here and there. But all of this is just from ZTech. But the difference is it's not just the default config, it's me taking the time to set up all the tabs and set up the multiple overview windows. So that's really important. I don't mind sharing this, by the way. If anyone just wants to grab mine and want to use that, that's fine as well. You can send me an in-game mail to Haunting Deity and I'll mail it to you.
I have a question. What is inhibs?
Inhibs, so it's this thing here. So it's mobile sino inhibitor. So basically, hostiles can drop these things here on the grid, and it prevents sinos from being lit. And that's not good if you're a capital, which needs to get capital assistance to be saved.
Makes sense now. Okay,
what will happen in the event of a cap response? If a cap is tackled with that on grid, it's up to the subcaps to remove that, and then the caps can jump, like all the facts and stuff can then jump in. If the subs can't do that, then the backup caps can't jump in. Can Black Ops still be lit under an inhib? Yeah, so Black Ops stuff can still be lit under inhib, but it's more about the caps. Right, so what I'd like to do now is I'm talking like a lot of theory, and that is really what an FC class should maybe mostly be about. But I want to like maybe do a little bit of demonstrating this in practice. So I'm going to switch my stream over. Okay, so this video here, this is a video of a fight when I was in fraternity. So obviously you're seeing Condi's red. Why is Condi red? Yeah, Condi's red because I was in fraternity at the time. But I'm just using, this is one of the fights that I'm really proud of. Yeah, if we look at this fight here, this is a perfect example of why those tabs are so useful. So if I skip along to like something like this, yeah, exactly. So here you can see, if you look at the main overview tab here, it's again just filled to the brim with just a bunch of ships. But then if you look here on the bushers section, you'll be able to see all of the bushers that are trying to fuck me over. So basically they've got a Bifrost and 3 Storks, and what they were trying to do is bury themselves within my fleet and then bush my fleet members off. So what I was able to do then was see that very easily and then counter that. So if you look at like my broadcast history, I'm going at Ishtar, 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 Ishtar. Then they try this ship. It's like, okay, so I need to swap and I need to start broadcasting them. One thing you can do there, it's probably not advisable to have your entire fleet just insta-focus on the bushers. If that's like perhaps a little bit of a waste, unless you're really at risk. Maybe unless no, I probably wouldn't ever really do that. And what you can do instead, just in a situation like that, is you can commit drone targets. So instead of just saying, okay, after this Hugin, everyone shoot the Bifrost, like no. Like what you can do is say, right, your main broadcasts are for your guns, so the guns are going to shoot that Ishtar, then that Ishtar, then that Ishtar. But then what you can say is, right, guys, this Bifrost I'm broadcasting, that's your drone target. So put your drones on the Bifrost, and then put your guns on this next Ishtar or this next CFI, whatever it is that you're broadcasting. And that way, you're not like having the whole fleet committed to shooting a fucking Bifrost, which is probably under your guns of like 70% of your fleet anyway. It's just instead to have the drones on them. That's probably a wiser approach. Yeah, so that's essentially a practical use of what I've been saying there. Another reason why your overview setup is so, like, you're probably like thinking, is this an FC class or is it an overview class? I mean, the answer is yes, because like in my opinion, like a comprehensive, well-constructed overview is one of the most important and best things that you can have set up as an FC. So for example, let's analyze this fight a little bit more. So some background information. So I'm in fraternity and we're blue with Pandemic Horde at the time. And on this fight, I was working with all of your best friend, Zegum. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. It's just this random Horde FC, you know. You probably don't know who he is, but Zegum, right? So I'm working with Zegum to fight Arcadios's CFI fleet. Okay, now, here's the thing. I'm in CFIs, and Zegum's in Retries. So the question really is here, how do we coordinate fire here? Because we're obviously in two different fleets. You can see on the grid here, the blue frigates there, that's Zegum's Retry fleet. I'm obviously the purple, and then the red is obviously the Goons, right? So how do I coordinate fire here? Well, there's a bunch of different ways of doing that. But the way that we done it here was by using overview tabs. So if you see here, initially at the start of this engagement, I'm just on the, let me get to the correct point. I'm just on the regular PvP tab. So you can see we've just decloaked, we've just jumped through, we're decloaked, we're starting to engage. Now you can see here, I've just broadcasted whatever's close. I've broadcasted this Ishtar, that CFI's probably next, or it's an Ishtar, then it's a CFI, yes, you get the idea. But you see the problem with this is, how are you supposed to effectively communicate, like what target should Zegum shoot as well if you're trying to shoot the same target, right? That's difficult, because if you just go like this and say, right, okay, you know, by the way, Zegum's just a placeholder. That's obviously just whatever allied FC that you happen to be working with, right? I'm just going to say Zegum because that's relevant to this specific video, right? So if you're communicating with Zegum on the correct target, how are you going to do that? Because if I say to him, for example, right, I'm shooting Shaya in the Cyclone Fleet issue, how is he going to find that quickly enough? And doing that over and over and over, then all right, yeah, then it's Yuki, or sorry, then it's Yama in the Broadsword, then it's Sai in the Cyclone, then it's fucking Mach 1 in the Harpy. He's never going to be able to find these, so you have to have a way of communicating that. Now, the way that we done it was, we said, right, let's focus on a specific group. So what we agreed to do was we'll just focus on the Ishtars. That's where that tab comes in. I swapped it to cruisers only, right? But what I was also able to do, that helps a little bit, but it's still quite difficult to communicate the target. So what else did I do? So I filtered it to cruisers only, but then I done this. I filtered it by alphabetical order on the name. So now that's really easy for Zigum or whoever the allied FC is to figure out what it is you're going to shoot next. Because if you just tell them, I'm going to shoot cruisers only and I'm going to shoot in alphabetical order, well, they can just set that up like that as well. They can just have the overview in alphabetical order and just go down the list because it's the same alphabetical order no matter who's looking at it, right? Now, you might think to yourself, but wait a minute, Haunting, but that doesn't seem necessary because can't you just sort by type? Yeah, but the problem with sorting by type is if we go back to here, like look at all this shit on overview. If you sort by type and you want to focus a specific target, again, you're having to scroll and look for the specific thing that you're trying to shoot. And FC bandwidth is very much a thing. As much as you can do as possible to not have to actively think and manage something as you're doing 10 other things like an octopus, the better. And having a comprehensive overview cell which allows you to do this, allows you to do that. Okay? So cruisers only, filter by name, and then we just go down the list. And then that was what allowed us to coordinate fire. There's other ways to coordinate fire as well, but I'm not going to get into all that right now. That's just one way based on your overview settings, which is really useful. And it was really effective. Right, so the next thing is just a little bit of a quick thing here. MoTDs, this is all just about FC preparation. These are the kind of tools that you want to have set up for yourself. So if I go on to my fleet thing here, you're able to save MoTDs. So if you make an MoTD, let's say, you make the coolest MoTD setup ever, and you want to save it, then you can click this button here with your fleet, the more button, and click store fleet setup, and then you have to give the wing a name. I just normally name the wing PvP, but you can name it whatever you want. Name it my fleet or whatever. But then store fleet setup, and then name it coolest setup ever. Oh, I can't even do that, but yeah, coolest setup, and then you can have that. And then where you can then access your MoTD setups is go back there, and that'll be under fleet setups, and then it will be in here. Now, you can see here, I've set, this was one of the first things I'd done when I joined. So, basically from, day one upon joining Brave, I instantly just looked at the doctrines and just set all of these up. I haven't set, I've set Ravens up as well. Set all of these up. And I've got a Chinese one from Fraternity. But yeah, I don't need that so much these days. But yeah, here's, my generic version. Oh, I do need to change that to UALX. But yeah, I'll do that later. But yeah, here's my sort of generic version, and I just kind of modify that for each doctrine. So, for example, if I want to form, Pandemic Horde member. If I want to form, for example, Feroxes, I've got the Ferox MoTD. Yeah, again, I haven't taken the time to replace this to UALX yet. Yeah, you get the idea. So if I want to do Feroxes, well, there's my MoTD for Feroxes. If I want to do Jackdaws, there's my MoTD for Jackdaws. And the only thing which requires multiple setups is your AHACs. Did I get around to setting that up? Yeah, I have my AHAC set up as well. You might want to make multiple setups for different mid slot configurations. I've done that before. I don't think I've got around to it yet. Because I've never had to form AHACs in this alliance yet. But basically, I'd have a setup for each. So for example, if you want to form AHACs, you want to do a scram and a tracking disruption fit, then I would have that in the MoTD. That's your refits, and then save that as the one, and have maybe 4 different ones. But yeah, that's the idea. I would definitely have MoTD set up for all of them, so they're just ready to go as soon as possible. One little note. A lot of people often mention about this, that the way I have this set up, you can see in the MoTD on the doctrine page, I've got the link to the doctrine page, as opposed to what a lot of FCs will do, where they will link the actual fit, so you can just click the fit and have it. This is really personal preference territory, what I'm about to say. There's nothing wrong with either one. I think this way is better personally, and the reason why is because doctrines get updated all the time. If you have your MoTD set up where you're linking the fits and then you save them, then you have that loaded each time, and then that doctrine's fit gets updated and you either aren't aware of it or you just forgot to change it, and then you load that MoTD and people buy that ship, you are now having people buy the outdated fit. And that's actually happened to me in the past, where I've had the fits linked to there, and then people buy the fit which was outdated. The reason why I like to have it just linked to the doctrine page where people can then log into the website and get the fit from there each time is because the doctrine page is always up to date, or at least one would hope that the doctrine page is always up to date. So you never have to worry about giving people outdated fits. But again, is that like objectively good? No, that's not objectively good. I just think that's my way of doing it. But if you want to link the fits, then go ahead. Plenty of FCs do it, but like even like plenty of like good FCs. Like I think like Profi does it, Kill does it. I think a lot of people do it. It's just my personal kind of thing that I don't like to do that. I prefer to link to the doctrine page. Right, next point of order: cheat sheets. Guys, who uses cheat sheets in here? I certainly do. If we look at this here. If we look at my notepad, I have got these. So I've got cheat sheets for every single doctrine. So this was again one of the first things I set up when I joined. I looked at all the doctrines, I loaded them all on Python, and then just looked at all of the ranges. This is really, really, really useful, and I recommend everyone have this set up. So if you're running, for example, a Ferox fleet, oh shit, like okay, they're 60 kilometers off. What should I be loading right now? Is it thorium? Is it iron? What is it? You don't have to worry about it. Then you're like panic, like, oh fuck, can someone link me the fit, and fucking you're simulating the fit and loading ammo in, trying to figure it out. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. Again, we're thinking about mental bandwidth. Keep the bandwidth as low as possible, right? Have this all prepared beforehand so that you don't have to think about it. So if I'm running Feroxes, I know that if I have a range script in the tracking computer, I know that if the enemy is 60 kilometers away, I probably want to load thorium, or if they're burning away, I probably want to start loading iridium, right? I know that if they're within about 30 kilometers, I want to start loading antimatter, for example, that kind of thing. Have all their ranges. These are obviously like optimal fall off. I don't have damage types here because hybrid it's always kinetic thermal. But if we look at, for example, hurricanes, it has all of the damage types as well. So I know, for example, right, okay, this ship has a kinetic weakness and they're far off. Okay, so what do I load? I load titanium sable, as an example. And just having that really easily accessible in your notepad, just ready to go with all the doctrines, is just incredibly useful. When it comes to battleships, I'd recommend also having targeting range stuff. That becomes a really big, important thing as well. But I think if you're starting out, that's not going to be relevant to you at the moment anyway. But yeah, have this kind of stuff set up. You notice it's all really important kind of setup stuff.
What is your guideline? What was you using meta fit or optimal fit to guide you on the distances?
I'm using the optimal fit, assuming max skill. So yeah, obviously, like, you're going to want to have in your head that, yeah, well, in theory, the maximum range of a flycatcher with a range script is 92 kilometers. In practice, you probably want to account for like taking maybe 10-15% off that and maybe operating within maybe 75-80 kilometers to account for people that do not have max skills. But all of these are assuming max skills. The next thing, and it is the last thing for today, the last point of order, is Ceptor Alt. My friends, when I started, I used to FC without a Ceptor Alt. And the amount of times I would be in situations where I'm saying, let's say, for example, like I'm sitting on a gate with my fleet, I have no idea what's on the other side. I'm like, shit, well, I can't just like blind jump into this gate. That's dumb. I'm going to get myself killed potentially. It could be all kinds of things over there. I say, right, can someone go through that gate? And the amount of times where I'm not getting people that are able to do that because either they don't have microphones or there's just otherwise no one around to do that in a Scepter is crazy. And it was only after I started running every single fleet with a Ceptor Alt, so that's what this Hongting Deity guy is always for, my Chinese cousin. That's what this guy's for, it's my Ceptor Alt. Ceptor Alts are really, really important, and now that I've FC'd with one, I genuinely cannot imagine and would not desire to FC without one. Now obviously not everyone has the luxury and privilege of being able to afford a second Omega account, and some people might not have a second monitor either. This is just more for, you know, if you have like a second monitor, and if you do have the means to be able to get a second account and train it into a Scepter, I highly, highly, highly recommend you do it for your FC. It's really, really useful. So for example, if you want to +1 when your fleet's traveling, to check for pipe bombs, that's a really important role. If you want to like constantly follow an enemy fleet around and keep track of where their movements are at all times, that's what it's useful for. If you want to, like, if you're like on a grid, if you're like fighting somewhere or bashing somewhere and you want to have a perch that you can bounce off to, or maybe it's like making bookmarks all over the grid as you're going, then that's really useful for that. It's useful for checking wormhole health. So if you're using like unis or feeder or something, and you're let's say you travel to the wormhole and you go bash something, it's been like an hour, you don't know if that wormhole's still there, and maybe it's 8 jumps away. So before moving your fleet 8 jumps across somewhere that for a wormhole that might not be there anymore, you should maybe first send the Ceptor Alt and check if it's still there. And it's also good for providing war pins for people who need it in unis, for example. So it's just really, really, really useful, and I highly, highly recommend you train a Ceptor Alt. Make sure it has a cloak and an interdiction. That's like the main thing. So if I get my fit, hopefully I've got it saved. Yeah, this is my Ceptor Alt fit. You'll notice that this is not what you would want to use if you were like running it as a tackle ship. So you can see, for example, it has hyperspatial rigs. That's not good for if you're trying to do a tackle ship. In a tackle ship, you need to have lock speed and lock range rigs to be able to orbit within your point range. But when you're doing scouting, you're focusing on speed, you know, and then you've got a cloak there. The core probe launchers are for launching nearby and putting the thing really close to you, and then making pings on the grid. But that's like that's a thing for another day, to be honest. But yeah, have Ceptor Alt. I recommend the Malediction personally. The main takes. What are the main takes? The main number one take is honestly your overview. Hello in it. That's like the number one thing I want you to take away. Is, in my opinion, you really cannot FC effectively, or you cannot FC as effectively as you potentially could, if you do not have a comprehensive overview setup. That's like my main thing. And other than that, just having MoTDs prepared in advance, having cheat sheets prepared in advance before you have to ping a fleet. All of these kind of setup things, all the like just got FC logistics, if you will, are really important and will really help you and assist you in the running of your fleets. And then the main take is also, if you have the means to have a Ceptor Alt, then you really ought to. Let's see if there's any final questions. So, do you keep your Ceptor Alt in a combat effective fit, or do you use a nullifier probe with like sub 2? So it's sort of like half and half. Like, I don't have sub 2 seconds. If you wanted sub 2 seconds, you would have to drop the overdrives for a double inert stab. But like the problem with that is, like, keep in mind what is this Scepter going to be doing a lot of the time. This Scepter is going to be on grids burning pings. If you're not fast enough to run away from hostile Scepters, then you're going to get caught and it will be killed, or you cannot otherwise maintain your ping on the grid. So this is designed to be like as fast as possible. There's not many Scepters that will be faster than this unless they're just like geared up really heavily to do it, like with pods and boosters and stuff like that. But outside of like stuff like that, like your average Scepter is probably not going to catch this, or at least it will be as fast as it and not much more. Why do you suggest Mal over the other Scepters? That's because, like, so for example, the one that I used before was the Stiletto. Let's see if I've got the fit for that. This was my old fit that I used for a long time. But the problem with the Stiletto is it's a bit harder to fit the probe launcher on there. So if I simulate this Stiletto fit, Look how tight that is. 0 power grid and 0.5 CPU left. You can't fit anything else on here. And it's also, let's look at the speed as well. It's actually slower than the Malediction by a good 300 meters per second. So if you have a stiletto and then the enemy have a Malediction, their Malediction will eventually catch up with your stiletto. So the idea is you want to be as quick as possible. The Crow is just dog shit. Like, the Crow is the slowest of them all. The Ares is potentially fine, but I use the Malediction. Because it can fit the probes and it's one of the fastest scepters. I think it actually might even be the fastest scepter out of all of the options. Maybe even tied with the Ares.
Do you need a lot of technical skill prior to trying FCing?
No, I mean that's a fallacy, right? Because how would you get technical skill if you don't try FCing, right? So it's just you just need to get to build experience, you know. Question: how to choose doctrine? Yeah, I mean that is a big question. I mean, it's generally speaking, like for example, if you're countering, it depends. It first of all depends if you want the fight or not. If you want the fight, you don't outship them or outfor them too hard. So, for example, if there's a Kiki fleet in your space, the best counter I've ever found to Kikimoras, if you really want to fight Kikimoras, is just get a bunch of Ferox navies, have them orbit at like 50 kilometers, have a sphere formation at 50 kilometers, load Iridium and just blast them, and there's nothing they can do about it because they can't get under your guns because you're in such a big sphere. But most people will run away from that. You're not going to get the fight. If you want the fight, I would just go and, you know, something more reasonable, and that they're able to take, but not something that compromises you and you're going to lose. You're obviously going to lose. Yeah, but I think that's a really big question that can't just be answered quickly at the end of a lesson, to be honest. But I hope that maybe gave you something.